Hi, and welcome to the Scientistsage Sangha. I am so happy to have you here. My name's Nancy Anderson Dolan, and I'm from Wise Heart Wellness. And tonight we're talking about Ikigai. And it's not Ikigai. That would be not very good to talk about. Ikigai. And it's spelled, I gotta make sure I know my spelling while I'm doing this. Ikigai. Okay. And it's a Japanese concept. And it literally, iki means life and gai means purpose. So it's sort of a life purpose idea, but it's a concept that really talks about bringing bliss into what you are doing through life, like everything you're doing, and finding ways to have it fit together. The only thing that I can imagine that we have close to it is this idea of work-life balance, but it's really so far beyond that. We don't have a word for it. So that's why I, use that particular word rather than try and translate it, because what it really, really means about, finding purpose, not necessarily, that I am going to fund an orphanage and that sort of thing, or start the next big tech company, but really finding purpose in little moments and stringing all those little moments together. And that kind of thing for me was so attractive to learn about early on, because I spent the first like 29 years of my life really trying to figure out things and force things and just to feel right in my body while I'm out in the world doing things. And I kept thinking that if I just did the right thing, that I would feel better. Or if I just used the right drug, substance, behavior, I would feel better. And I would hit that sweet spot. And then I spent the next 30 years going, okay, that wasn't right. What are we going to try? And I spent the next 30 years getting inside myself and seeing what my soul wanted and seeing how it could come together in my life. And now I'm just in this process of being able to open to life as it comes and intentionally enjoying it all. So it really, it's not about, sitting down and figuring out all of your values and all of the things and looking for that deep purpose and all that. That may come up in the exploration, but it really is this evolution, this ongoing evolution. So the idea of Ikigai and life in the Western idea, it might be more about what am I going to do for a living and that sort of thing, or a political orientation or a particular achievement academically. Maybe it would relate to a career like getting an MBA or something. But Ikigai is more holistic than that. It really is about having really good relationships. And those will encompass work relationships and family relationships and social relationships or community, because that is such an important part of it. And it's interesting because all the research says that preventing people from declining quickly, whether it's in terms of memory or activity or emotional stability or happiness, is really, really on this level of relationships and really robust social kinds of relationships. And this idea of Ikigai is a really old concept, long before the research was done. And it comes out of Okinawa. And that right there, they have some of the oldest living people in the world, and a bigger number of them than most other places in the world. And so they live this Ikigai, and they don't discuss it as much as we do, because they've had the concept, they've grown up with the concept. So it becomes like breathing. This is how you live. Where in lots of Western countries, we don't have those guiding concepts. There are some religions that try and provide them for us, those kinds of things. But it's not the same all-encompassing kind of thing that Ikigai is. And it really is about being purposeful in the idea that what I choose is something that fulfills me, but also something that I bring to the world. And so it's something the world can make good use of and that I find joy in. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be, everybody like, I'll be an actor or I'll be a politician running things. It means that I may bring joy by gardening in my front yard and then be an accountant and help people be peaceful because I'm particularly good with numbers and money and things like that. So it is this weaving together. Like I say, it's not a work-life balance, it's about weaving it all together. So people might make decisions based on things like if the workplace doesn't lend itself to good connection, that might not be something they continue to do, regardless of the profession. And the idea of now at this point in my life, I am taking on some other kinds of work, but there's a very specific requirement for it. It has to be very close to my house. I don't want to spend time in commute anymore. And so if it is something I love to do and it's close to my house, I will absolutely consider it. And it may pay really well, or it may not pay as well. And that's a consideration, but only part of the puzzle with the rest of it, the balancing of it. And that's what they're talking about with Ikigai, that there is something about what we earn, so what we get paid for. I'm just going to switch to a picture so you can get the whole concept all together. Just a moment. I guess when you're doing that, you'll always really hope that's going to be just a moment, but most of the time it's not. Just a sec here. There we are. Okay, there we go. And so this idea of Ikigai, that is you can see it's the part in the middle where all these different things come together, doing things that we love, things that the world needs, what we can get paid for, and what we're good at. So those kinds of things weaving together and intentionally bringing that together so that it's something that I like to do and want to get up in the morning and go and do. And it's something that contributes in some way that I feel good about. And that could be somebody who, makes fine wine and they're contributing to that kind of thing. Or it could be somebody who, works in a hospital and they're contributing that way. So the idea of feeling that fit. And lots of people I know that do driving, delivery, long haul trucking, things like that, they're really happy in it because they're contributing to the flow of things, but they don't have to be around as many people. But there is like a brotherhood almost, or a sisterhood that grows up in different kinds of professions like that. And they're part of a special group. And in that, they find a lot of joy seeing the same people going to the same truck stops, and they tell amazing stories of helping people on the road when they're delivering, things like that. So it isn't necessarily in the job description or in our idea of our mission on the planet. I actually believe that my mission on the planet is to enjoy every day and be a light for people to live in that way if they'd like to. And so there's not a lot of job descriptions that include that, but I'm finding there are a lot of jobs that include it. And from working at the Stampede, which is a fair that comes to our city every year, and I meet all kinds of people of ages and stages and jobs, and lots of other professionals actually take that 10 days off and go and work at the Stampede as well, because we just love it, because we just enjoy it so much. So this weaving of things together is really a primary part of this. The kinds of things that we do that we love, and we might do that for work, or it might afford us the opportunity to do the things we love by working. And so a friend of mine was really in love with hockey, but she was working at a factory. But while she was doing that, she was volunteering for a big hockey organization and learning to do things like run the video boards in the arenas and running particular promotions for different hockey teams. And that now has become her primary work. And so that pathway just she just kept walking it. It wasn't like, okay, I have to drop what I'm doing now and go over there, because she couldn't be paid for it in the beginning. It wasn't as big a thing and she wasn't as trained for it. So she kept doing what she was doing so that she could do more of what she loved. So this pathway idea, this constant evolution, and this happens when people retire. I know so many people that are started to retire, but then didn't like not having useful work to be doing and the socialization of that kind of thing. And so they started working other interesting things that they wanted to be trying and doing that took them places they enjoyed and had them doing things that they liked. So, like I say, this is not a, um, right now, and this is what I'll do forever kind of thing. It is an attitude that we take into life as life evolves. And so that's one of the main concepts I wanted to talk about. But I'm going to talk about a couple of other things that Remy, the person that wrote the article that I included in the email this week, she talks about some basic concepts of Ikigai. And it's really drilling down into this life of joy. And it's being mindfully, meaningfully engaged and listen to what life is telling us about what we do well and what we like, that sort of thing. So it's that when we engage life, we learn from it and we evolve. And so we might have inherent skills or we might go and learn them, that kind of thing. But it is this holistic idea. In the West, we have a much more fragmented idea of work, and work happens only over there. And when we come home, we're not working and things like that. But really, it's not the external and it's not the achievement as much. And so when you embrace this philosophy, you also agree to sort of sit and listen to yourself and make changes as they come up. So lots of people go to university for 4 years, 8 years, and then they feel stuck. They have to go in that. But the stories of people that are following the Ikigai, the often Michael Singer is a great example. He went into economics. That's what he was getting a PhD in. And he ended up setting up a Sangha that has run for 60 years. And it would not be what he thought it would be. And he ended up building houses for people and then creating code and computer programs. And he had no training in those things. It just was what came to him, and he enjoyed the next thing. So it really is this idea of discovery as you go along. And it can't, it's not just over there and it's not a final thing. Literally, it is so many things that come together and the ideas about it. So I want to give you some of these examples about sayings about Ikigai that might help expand the idea of it a little bit. And the first one is to find your Ikigai is to discover your passion, mission, vocation, profession. So this is not one singular purpose, but it's a whole bunch of things wound together. This passion, what do I have a passion for? What do I feel is a vocation, like the thing I should be doing in the world? And how that might intertwine with the other pieces there. But so we're living from the idea of passion as opposed to acquiring things. So a lot of people in the West are going forward to something they don't necessarily have a passion about, but they believe it will get them something else that they want. And so it's very different when you fall in love with something and then work towards being able to do more of what you love. That's a whole different thing than thinking, okay, I want to make a lot of money and then I think I'll find some things I'll like. And so this idea of discovering as you go. And literally, one of the other big things is this idea of rhythm, the harmonizing both our work, our mission, our leisure, our relationships, things like that. So we're the same person going through all of those things. And we have the same passions and that kind of thing. And so that work is not so much work. It feels like joy and feels like play. And part of it is how we think about it. And part of it is actually what we're doing. And so the idea I tell people, the story we tell about things de- defines how we experience them. And there's always a sort of fearful, difficult side that we could tell it from, or a faithful, joyful kind of side we can tell it from. I think we might talk more about that next week, but this idea about how we think about things is central to Ikigai. And it's, they call it Ikigai, they call it the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. So it really does, it enhances the quality, but also the quantity. So the things that you do and how well you live, it actually has this impact on your body if you live in Ikigai. So this idea that it's a physical thing as much as a mental thing or the actions that you take in the world. Sorry about that noise. 1 second. I'm going to pause for a moment. Mhm. I'm going to try and pause for a moment. It's the only way I can pause. Sorry for that little interruption. Okay, now where were we? We're talking about this idea that Ikigai is woven all the way through your life and not just on one spot or another. And when we look at it that way, we are aligning with ourselves and our bodies and our minds and our souls. So it is that living wholeheartedly. And that's a newer idea to Western culture because we don't seem to have that opportunity. But it's not an opportunity as much as an orientation and an alignment of our lives. So that's the idea of it. Literally, we are seeing life a little differently. And so it doesn't start with, okay, I have to know my purpose. It starts with looking around and seeing what I'm enjoying. And so I love to do these talks. I love to research and I love to play with new ideas and I like to share the things that have been really helpful for me on my long journey through all sorts of addictions and depressions and illness and that sort of thing. And that really makes me excited and happy. And how I do it has changed over the years, certainly. In the beginning, but there was not any of this sort of tech. So it was all face to face and volunteering in places and then teaching in places and a journey of evolution into different kinds of things and opportunities. And so I encourage people, invite people to really notice what you love about what's going on in your life right now, where you find joy. And if you are set to that, like a GPS looking for a particular destination, when we set our GPS for Ikigai, then we often find more of it. We find it hidden in places we didn't expect. And we find it sometimes just within us. And we find out we don't need all the external manifestations of it. We have this inside us already, and we live differently in the path that we're living. So lots of interesting things to try out. So I'll invite you to come into a bit of a contemplation about this and get comfortable. Feel free to go off camera if you're live with us. Put your feet up and just take a breath first. I always start with that because when we breathe deeply, our heart and mind get more coherent. And Ikigai is all about that intricate dance between the heart and the mind, between that introspection and taking action, between discovering something that we love and discovering ways to create that or attract it in our lives. So definitely breathing. When I think about how blessed I am to be able to take a deep, clear breath, I feel some real joy in that. In this moment, I get another breath. And that can be a big part of enjoying life, those next moments. And just to open up to the parts of your life that are already trending that way. Maybe you are embarking on a career that you are very excited about. Maybe you are starting a family. Maybe you have a passion that you follow that isn't a job, that is just a joy. Just feel how those things make you feel, how you feel expansive. And then expand to your relationships. The relationships that bring you joy. And these may be not what we might commonly think of. It might be the little old couple that walked down my street daily. And when my sons were toddlers, they would be so excited and wave to them every day. I believe that we brought joy to them and they brought joy to us. And it might be that particular clerk at a grocery store that remembers your name out of all the thousands of people they see. And it may be someone you don't know. Maybe it is an author that lived 1,000 years ago that wrote things that moved you and you love that. And you stay in relationship with their writings, their ideas. Just let your heart and mind open up to relationships that have that feeling of joy and expansion. And then let yourself open up to things that may not be present that you might long for. And you may long to move around physically more. You may long for people to have adventures with. You may long for support in difficult times. You may long for a home that really holds you comfortably in it. You may long to do something you've thought about a lot, but never actually taken steps towards it. And I encourage you to allow these longings to come up. They might make you feel a little uncomfortable. When we feel a lack in our society, we rush to fill it right away. But I encourage you just to feel the longing for these things. Let that seep into your body and your heart. And let it seep into your brain. There's so much evidence that when we let it come into our brains with some joy and interest, our brains tag it as something it should look for. And the most interesting opportunities may come up. So I just invite you to contemplate these things in the next while. Those things you love about your life and things already, and the longings you have. Because this is the path of Ikigai. Living into both those things. And it takes you into all those areas of your life. Your passions, vocations, meaningful, purposeful living day to day. And again, not in a way that's always rewarded from outside. The biggest rewards come from inside. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Those that are live with us, we'll start a discussion in a moment. And those that are watching this later, thank you so much for showing up. If you care to show your support, feel free to like the video on YouTube or subscribe. And we are always interested in your input, things that you would suggest that you might like to hear us talk about. And we appreciate donations to keep this going. Thank you so much for joining us. I am with you. You are with me. Blessed be. Good night.